What's up everyone, Marco here and welcome to the first video on my channel in 2025 about how to dominate Google Shopping ads in 2025. And this will be a very actionable video. I will show you screenshots, I will show you notes, strategies for how to really, take over your competition in Google Shopping. Last year we spent about $10 million on Google Ads for our direct ad management clients. All e-commerce, of course. And I can tell you that with those strategies that I'm presenting you here today, you lay the perfect foundation for maximum revenue with Google. Now, a lot of our ad spend, of course, goes into shopping, and the strategies that I'm sharing here with you, they are based on, in total now, of more than $35 million in ad spend for a whole variety of brands. So that is not just some theory that I made up for the sake of this video, but actual stuff that you can implement today. Now, there are three main categories that I want to talk about here today. First of all, we have campaign structure, how to structure your shopping campaigns based on your situation. I want to talk about data quality and merchant center. A lot of people ask me all the time how to do that properly, and it's very underlooked. And then number three, of course, the actual ad management. So how do you run the ads, or how should you run the ads? What about bidding, when to exclude, all these kind of things. So make sure that you go through all three stages. Ideally, you watch the video from the beginning till the end, because I guarantee in each category there is something that you can pick up and literally implement right after this video. Okay, so with that being said, without any further ado, let's get started with section 1, the campaign structure. And you want to start very simple, right? In the beginning, or when you have a very low budget in general, you don't need a layered, like 2 campaigns set up. I see that all over the place. People spend $30 a day and they come up with like 8 shopping campaigns, right? I will tell you now about the general or about the ideal structure depending on where you are. So here, for example, let me move that away. Here, for example, is a screenshot from one of our clients spending quite a bit of money. You can see here, this was, I think, from a 2-week time frame. That is just, not even all his campaigns, right? And you can see here a whole bunch of shopping. You can see a little bit of Pmax. It's not in US dollars, but in Hong Kong dollars. Nonetheless, it's quite a bit of money, quite a few campaigns. And if you have, high budgets or many SKUs, in this case here, that client has a few 100,000 SKUs if we count in all the variations and variables. If you sell in all kinds of countries, or if you have many ad angles, right? So let's say you have a handful of product, but each of those handful of products, and each of these products has like a different audience, different keywords to use. Sometimes you want to have separate shopping campaigns with, their own negative keywords and all that stuff. Shopping, Pmax being like an extra thing here as well. But if you have like a few key products, then you can utilize individual campaigns per product. Normally, most stores typically have a few categories. They typically have a few hundred or a few thousand products. In that case, of course, you don't create individual campaigns for one product usually, unless it's an absolute crazy bestseller. But instead, you just want to make sure that you have a bunch of campaigns to get the maximum results. And I will tell you in a second why exactly that is and how that works. So if you have, as I said, lots of SKUs or a high budget, which I would say is at least something like $5,000 to $10,000 a month, right? It's not really high, but something where you can start segmenting. You want to have a catch-all shopping campaign. That's always a no-brainer for every single account out there, regardless of what you sell, how much, we have catch-all campaigns spending $2,000, $3,000 a day. But the point is you need one. You need a catch-all campaign where all the products come in, low bids, usually on manual CPC or max clicks, right? You want a branded shopping campaign. Now, that is a mistake that I see all the time. You want to block your brand terms from all shopping campaigns except for this branded shopping campaign. Why? Because just as you do with, for example, a brand search campaign, you want a brand shopping campaign that will have a sky-high ROAS, because most conversions will come from branded, obviously, right? But that is the only way that you can really optimize your shopping campaigns, get the most results, best reporting, etc. How does that work? You block all kinds of common queries that are not branded in your brand campaign, and you block your brand name in all your other shopping campaigns, right? Pretty straightforward, but this is a great way to make sure that all your brand sales are funneled into this one campaign. Then you have a best performer scaling campaign. Okay, so most brands out there, the absolute vast majority, they have a handful of products, or they have, 1%, 2%, 5%, maybe 10% of products generating virtually all the revenue. So what makes sense is to run a campaign for those best performing products, right? Otherwise, you are constantly paying more than necessary. So when the product is proven, or when you know for a fact that you have a handful of products that will scale very, very well, it makes sense to put them in their own campaign, where they get their own budget, where they get aggressive bidding. You want to get as many customers as possible, and so on and so forth. Now we have margin-based campaigns. You want to have campaigns that include high margin products, and you want to bid very aggressively, similar as with your best performers, right? So you want to say, hey Google, I want to have a target ROAS of only 150%. I want you to spend the money super aggressively. And same might go for Pmax, but that's in a separate video. I have many Pmax videos, make sure to check them out, and I will also do more specifically for 25 soon. Then you have low margin products where, we have clients that literally sell products for $9.99 and for $200, and the $9.99, they make virtually no money, right? So you want to be very conservative here. You maybe still want to advertise them just because you want to funnel people into your store and possibly they buy something else, but you want to be super conservative, very high ROAS target or very low manual CPCs, because Google doesn't care about pricing yet, right? If you are not using target ROAS or stuff like that, or if you do, of course, they still don't care about the actual margin behind it. So maybe you get your 200% ROAS on a $10 item, but that's far from profitable for you. So that is very important. And then, of course, you can run Pmax along shopping now. So it used to be that when you have Pmax, it triumphs over everything else, and you cannot really spend money on any other campaign type, really. That's now over. So you can run those two alongside each other. I will talk a bit more about Pmax later as well. Okay, so that's a generally more advanced campaign setup. Again, we will talk more about the ad management part in the third section too. Here is what I would say is a very good ultra basic beginner setup. And you might even, consider not using Pmax right away. It's a very low budget and just testing the waters. What are we doing here? That's actually a real life, client example, even though we normally don't work with low budget clients. It's very, very rare these days. But every now and then when they have, when they have good, previous experience, or when they have a track record, or when they are strong on another platform, or whatever it might be, we make some exceptions and work with smaller brands too. And of course, a lot happens within those campaigns then. So when you have a low budget, you want to work inside the campaigns and you don't want to have many campaigns. What you see here is a segmented shopping campaign, remember, right? Segmenting products, a catch-all campaign targeting everything. We have a Pmax first test where we go with some promising products. We fine-tune all the assets. We use tailored headlines, tailored audiences, tailored images, tailored videos, even though in that case, they're not that great. Small brand, not that big of a budget to create high-quality assets. And we have, of course, the classical brand campaign. Note how we don't have a shopping brand campaign in here, because the brand traffic is so low that it doesn't really make sense here. But normally, when there is when the brand is somewhat established, I would have a brand shopping campaign in here as well. But the point is, with a very, very low budget, you can barely go wrong with shopping. Of course, you still have to do negative keyword research, optimize your feed, work on products, exclude them, and so on and so forth. As I said, the work happens within those campaigns, but you cannot really go wrong with the campaign structure. That is very important. Don't worry about having, as I said in the beginning, a 10 campaign layer and so on and so forth. Okay, so how do you go now from one shopping to many? Well, you start with the core all products shopping campaign if it's a brand new account or low budget. Then you want to branch out into brand versus non-brand shopping if you get brand queries, right? Then you want to scale individual top performers as soon as they come up. Most of the time, whether it's a client spending, $2,000 a month or $100K plus per month, they have absolute top performers and they want to be isolated quickly so that you don't carry wasted budget with you. Then you want to branch out to best performing categories as well. Many brands that have categories and subcategories, they have entire categories where they tend to be better across the board than the average product, okay? So if that's the case for you, you want to branch them out too. And then you can layer alpha beta campaigns only in very specific niches though. You know probably about this alpha beta, strategy that used to be very popular a couple of years ago, where you exclude queries from one campaign, but you don't from the other, so that you have like this perfect match This, in my opinion, only makes sense if you sell something super specific, like, for example, replacement parts for technical items. We have HVAC clients, or we have one selling car parts, where sometimes this makes sense too, right? Where you say if someone really describes a specific part, we expect the conversion rate to be like 10%, and therefore we bid it very aggressively. But that's literally some of the only examples here, because with virtually everything else, fashion, furniture, gadgets, cosmetics, jewelry, food, you name it, normally it's better to let Google do the heavy lifting in that regard, instead of being the super specific, excluding stuff campaign wide and then doing something else in the other campaign. That's normally not the best way to do it anymore. So then we have Pmax versus shopping in terms of the structure, right? And then we come actually to the feed management, feed optimization part, which will be very, very important as well. So always start with shopping, regardless of your budget. I always recommend to start with it just because you know that 100% of your budget will be in the shopping network, unlike Pmax where it's all over the place, potentially, right? Focus on shopping if you have bad assets as well. It's not only a budget thing or a conversion thing, it's also when you don't have great assets and when literally all your, when you literally just use white background product images. Sure, Pmax can still work very well. It does happen and everything. But for me, I try to use Pmax specifically for high quality asset brands whenever possible. 90% of the time, I would say. Then focus on shopping if you cannot spend $100 plus per day on Pmax easily. Some exceptions as always, of course, but normally if you cannot afford to spend $100 plus per day, at least for something like 2 weeks plus, Pmax is not for you because it will take a while to actually get there. Remember, there are so many variables. Then we have Pmax. It's kind of the opposite, but it's great to scale things up very quickly, especially if you don't want to bother too much. Don't get me wrong here. An optimized Pmax campaign will always destroy very generic, everything in there, no targeting, no optimization, no refinement. But nonetheless, you can throw a Pmax campaign out there and we'll get some sort of decent results. Of course, you have to pay attention that you're not just converting your own brand terms though, because that happens all over the place. And then it's, again, just money being wasted. Test Pmax once shopping peaks. If you feel like you cannot scale shopping anymore, very high search impression share, it's not growing, that's probably the number one reason why brands come to us. They cannot scale. They are stuck at 20K per month in ad spend, 30, 50, 100, and they have no idea how to move forward. And that's where we normally help and take them, for example, from 50 to 120K in monthly ad spend, right? That does happen quite regularly. So sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees, and Pmax can be a good solution, one out of many solutions, of course, to scale beyond shopping. But then again, it takes me back to other points. Pmax has to be optimized. You need assets. You run it properly. It's not that Pmax will, out of the blue, always beat shopping in terms of volume. Then use Pmax early if you have great product assets. Then you can sometimes skip or do both at the same time, which I normally recommend. But they have to be truly great. And you have to know that, hey, you have a visual product with great assets, so why bother spending all your money on shopping? In this case, do both, but I never run Pmax only in like new accounts, new strategies, etc. So now that you roughly know how to structure a campaign on a very basic level, depending on whether you have a high budget or low budget, new, established, etc., of course, there's much more detail. Nonetheless, I want to now jump to section 2, which is data quality and merchant center. First things first, focus on the 80-20. Optimized product titles are absolute important, and that's at least for your bestsellers. You don't have to do it for 10,000 items, but if you have 10, 20, 30 absolute bestsellers, make sure that they have crazily optimized titles. And you need engaging product images. Everything else comes, is literally unimportant in comparison. Yes, when we optimize an account to the maximum, degree, we do everything. But those two things, titles and images, are literally almost all of the game. Now, the impact of some shopping attributes I want to illustrate here real quick. Image and title, as I said, absolute number one by far. Then you have like the Google product category, which is also kind of important so that Google places you in the right auction with a bit more precision. Then having additional images, gender, color. I mean, in some categories, like some fashion categories, like color or gender, color are generally required. In that case, of course, they are more important. But normally, like all that stuff is bonus. And also descriptions play virtually no role at all. It is important, of course, that the description is approved and everything, because it's a mandatory field, but they have literally pretty much no effect. I would say probably 1%, right? And of course, that is just my experience. I don't say that this is the actual, impact of these different fields in a scientifically measured way or anything. You want to add product reviews to your merchant center if applicable. Here you can see we have a client in exactly that space. They are not shown right here, right now, but that's an actual search query for one of our clients' products selling leather bags. And you want to have reviews on your merchant center whenever possible. Now, will they make the whole difference in your performance? No. But are they able to maybe give you a 5% or 10% or 20% click-through rate boost? Absolutely. So you want to make sure that if you have reviews in your account, in your Shopify, in your store in general, and you can use them for Google Ads. They have some review partners where you can do this very, very quickly and easily. Otherwise, you may have to upload like a file and everything. But then you want to get them into the account for a higher click-through rate and just overall better performance, okay? Then fix errors and warnings and keep Merchant Center tidy. I cannot stress that enough. It's okay, like for example here, we have a client with 711,000 products in this case, right? That's a screenshot from one of our current clients. And the absolute vast majority of products are approved. We have 180 that are not approved. We have 2,000 that are limited. That's fine, because with that amount of products, there is always something where Google tries to crawl something, it doesn't work, or on the back end, the client changes a product and this is like a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of all products that are disapproved and a tiny fraction that are limited, where sometimes you cannot get around the limitation. The point is, the absolute vast majority should always be fully approved. You should have no warnings, no issues wherever possible. Of course, if you have very few products, like 10, 15, you should have everything approved, nothing limited, nothing not approved, and so on and so forth. Why? Because it will definitely give you more volume overall. It will give you more clicks, more impressions, and you have lower risk of getting your Merchant Center account banned for whatever reason. So your Merchant Center is not just a set and forget thing. You set it up once, now it works. You have to check this on a very regular basis, get email notifications, make sure that it's optimized, make sure that every product, at least every important product, is fully optimized with all the attributes and so on and so forth. Try to be unique and stand out on the shopping listings page. Same thing here. We have a client selling, Apple Watch bands and related products. And I've done a search here. And what you can see is most of them look very similar. And then we have one standing out a little bit with like this dark background, showing the product in a different way. I'm not saying that this is the one that will have the highest click-through rate. Probably it's not. This one here, by the way, has a nice little 15% off promotion, which is also always helpful, but they don't have a review. So it's, of course, I cannot tell which will have the highest CTR, but the point is, try to stand out on the shopping listings page wherever you can. If everyone uses white background, use ambient and vice versa. Try to use different color schemes. If everyone uses dark images, use light images. You see, especially when we have some absolute best-selling products with clients, we experiment with their images, with their titles and everything. And I've seen cases literally where a best-selling product that made us 6 figures per month in revenue, one product alone, we could add another like 50K per month in revenue or more by doing that stuff, right? That is, at that point, we haven't touched ad management in any way. It's just feed, Merchant Center, Shopify behind the scenes stuff. And this leads to a lot more revenue when done properly, and you don't even touch your bids or anything yet. So crazily important that you have a look at that and make sure that you do some research for at least your best performers to see what your competitors are doing. All right, so that was the Merchant Center section. Of course, in a little bit of a speed up, giving you the most important points. I could go on with, as I said, gender, color, etc., but all of that is pretty self-explanatory, and it doesn't really make a huge difference. We do it for our clients, yes, but if you just try to get the most out of your time, out of your performance, then the points I mentioned are by far the most important ones. So let's jump into section 3, which is the actual shopping ad management. And when we talk about that, you should start new shopping campaigns in small accounts on manual CPC. Now, why do I say small? Well, because if you have a lot of conversions, you can also start brand new campaigns with, for example, target ROAS. It's a myth that each campaign needs, 50 plus, 100 plus, 200 plus conversions per month to perform. Account conversions are very important. So if you have 1,000 conversions per month, feel free to start a new shopping campaign at target ROAS right away. Yes, conversions per campaign are more important than conversions per account in the end, or more beneficial, let's say, but every conversion that happens in your account, regardless of the campaign, will help your campaigns optimize. Now we have a magic number kind of, and that's in my opinion having 30 conversions per month in order to make use of max conversion value bidding. I must say that at this point in time, when we work with, as I said, very rarely, very new brands on Google that have some performance and everything on Facebook, but they're new to Google, I oftentimes have like 30 as my benchmark, 30 conversions per month across the entire account where I have a good feeling about, starting with TROAS bidding, sometimes even earlier. I've seen cases where having 10 conversions in a month gives you better TROAS performance than manual CPC. So it's pretty crazy now. Sometimes you have a hard cap and Google tells you, hey, you cannot switch your campaign to TROAS, but normally, 30, definitely try TROAS. It will normally work better. Negative keywords, important point. You want to start with a simple, basic list of key negative keywords whenever you run shopping ads. And here's a little note. You probably know these old school evergreen negatives like free, download, book, PDF, and stuff like that, right? Everyone, many accounts that I audit, they have those in their account. Don't get me wrong, that doesn't hurt you. But the point is, those are not negative keywords that are truly useful. These days, negative keyword research is a lot more advanced and complex because you cannot get these ultra low-hanging fruits anymore. It's not about having like 500 evergreens and now you block 80% of wasted traffic. These days, it's a lot more nuanced, and if you want to learn more about that, I have a full video planned and scripted already for exactly that, negative keyword research, how I do it with many, high-profile client brands. If that's interesting to you, make sure to subscribe right now if you want to not miss out on that. But the point is, negative keyword research is a lot more difficult than it used to be. Start with a simple basic list where you go with some super obvious, terms that are not relevant for what you sell. So if you don't sell certain colors, if you don't sell certain styles, start with that from the get-go. Then do a deep dive after, let's say, 1 or 2 weeks of search term data. You see, you get a lot of search terms very quickly. If you spend $100 per day on shopping, you will have, after 2 weeks, probably tens of thousands of search terms already. You can now use those for a deep dive and understand, okay, what are your customers actually looking for? What are they doing? Is what they're searching for actually relevant? Don't get me wrong, you don't need to have like 100% perfect relevance, right? Because sometimes someone searches for literally a competitor of yours, a different product, and they still buy from you. But if you spot something that is truly irrelevant, you want to block it as quickly as possible. And then you have ongoing negative keyword research over time. So after this initial deep dive, you should have a good, let's say, few hundred keywords negative list. That is a good start. And then, depending on how much time you have, your capacity, your budget, you should do it on a regular basis. Sometimes once a week, once a month, whatever. For us, again, it depends on the client size. We have some clients where I do it more than, once a week, sometimes even more than that for a period. And then I have others where I do it like once every month or so, because so much negatives that we block lead to very high quality traffic so that I don't have to do that often anymore. But negative keywords, especially for shopping, are super important in order to really maximize everything from performance to click-through rate and so on and so forth. I also like to structure my negatives in lists. So here's another example, a real life example, where we have a whole bunch of lists where I group them strategically. So this is, for example, their own brand, where I put everything related to their brand in there so that I can block it from every campaign that is not a brand campaign. I have irrelevant search queries where I see no way on earth that they can convert in any reasonable shape or form. Then I have informational ones, right? If someone isn't looking for products, but in this case here, for example, it's a supplement client where they use very informational search queries to inform themselves about something, but it's too broad. Sometimes informational queries can convert, but in this case, it's definitely too broad. So I have something for this. I have one for competitors. Why? Because in some campaigns, let's say with this client also we have a competitor campaign too. Obviously, we don't apply the competitor negative keyword list here, but we apply the others. So if you group them in structured negative lists, you can apply them to whatever campaign this is relevant for. Don't make the mistake and set all your negatives on the campaign level, because in that case you cannot reuse them. So you have them in this one campaign. If you would need them for another, now you have to manually, copy them over and do lots of work. You can use the editor and everything for it, yes, but having them in negative keyword lists is just the most elegant way to do it. Then, how to organize and kill products. One of the most important things as well, right? Like, how do you decide which product you should exclude, when, and so on and so forth. And the important thing is that you want to find or try to find underperforming products first. So in this particular case here, screenshot one of our clients, jewelry space, if I'm not jewelry space, if I'm not mistaken. And we have in this time frame that I'm looking at here, I believe that's a 90-day time frame or 30-day time frame. We have in total, 1,500 conversions for this one top performing product in here with a ROAS of 5. Right? And then we have 4, 6.5, 4.6, 3, super profitable. I mean, this client requires not even a 3, the client requires like a 2 point, kind of depends, but let's say on average, I can give you something like 2.2, 2.3. So extremely profitable thing that we have going on right here. But you see the second product with the second most conversion in this case, 900 conversions, only has a ROAS of 2.8. Now, the client is still profitable with it, but the problem is, sometimes this number one product is maybe a substitute for this one. So there are cases where this product will be more profitable for us because someone might search for, let's say, I want to give you an example here. Let's say we talk about, let's go back to the previous example of leather backpacks, right? Let's say we have 2 leather backpacks and the customer literally types in leather backpack. Now, this one here might be a lot more profitable on average, but both might be triggered by the search query. So in this particular case, we have a good reason to keep both, but I use that screenshot because sometimes you see it where the number one product is super profitable. The number two product, where you spend, considerable money on, right, is still profitable. In our case, we spent 34,000 on it, but it might be less profitable. And since it's a substitute for the first product anyway, you might just go with the most profitable one, right? Of course, if they have nothing to do with each other, then you want to keep both because it's not a substitute for the other. So if one is a leather backpack and the other one is a pair of sneakers, well, obviously there's different search queries, different search volume for it. But in our case, or in your case, when you have 2 very similar products and both are profitable, you still might want to go with the most profitable only and, for example, put this in a separate shopping campaign, just as I said. This would be a clear, absolute best performer, right? And that's one that you want to scale as much as you can. However, if you cannot get individually unprofitable or problematic products, you sometimes want to try categories if necessary. So here, for example, we have a custom label for margin, right? And you can see here, hopefully that's not too small actually, you can see how we have different profitability levels for different margins, right? We have in the price category 140 to 200, we have a ROAS of almost 5, then 4.6, 3.9, 3.7. So the most expensive category is the second least profitable. Again, still very profitable, but nonetheless, it's the second least one. And if you cannot get enough data on the product level, you want to dig deeper. You want to, for example, here, look into categories, brands, product types, custom labels. With custom labels, of course, you can do anything. And you can say, for example, okay, products that have that are in subcategory X, or that have a price of Y, or that have some other similarity that is somewhat useful. It shouldn't be random, of course, right? Products that start with an A or something. If you group something together like this, you can sometimes spot actual trends, and you can see, oh, there is a category that is actually underperforming. Oh, there is a category that is brutally overperforming, right? So if you cannot find the statistically significant data on the product level, move up one layer to the category or subcategory level. And then sometimes you see, oh, wait a second, I have one absolute outlier in, let's say, the more than $200 category, but everything else is super unprofitable, right? So now you see unprofitable category with one very profitable product. You can extract this and then, for example, pause the $200 category. I hope this makes sense and wasn't too complicated or confusing now, but that is a very powerful way to do it. And that is one of the top things, that when it comes to ad management / organization that you can do in terms of, boosting performance relatively easily, even though I admit it takes a lot of time and effort to go through all these different layers and nuances and go through the reports and everything. Then don't be too quick here. There is a rule of thumb, and I want to stress that it's a rule of thumb. 2 to 3 times the product price. If you spend 2 to 3 times the product price and it's vastly unprofitable, or you have no sales at all, you may want to kill it. The problem here is that I've seen many cases where a product performed much better later on, like it was unprofitable, and with enough tweaking and optimization, it actually became very profitable. Don't get me wrong here. I know that if you have a limited budget, and all of us have to some degree, you want to have some early indicators of success, and you want to say, hey, that's in this case a failure, and you want to stop it early. Yes. In this case, use the 2 to 3x product price rule. I see many people do like 1x. In my opinion, that's way too soon, and you will certainly miss out on a lot of hidden gems that way. But 2 to 3 times without being profitable at all, very far away, or no sale at all, then you can consider killing it, especially if this is like getting all the attention, right? If you have a very high budget, and you see this with many products, chances are, that are still stabilizing and everything. But if you see one really standing out in terms of the ad spend, but not performing at all, then that might be a good idea to do so. Also, you want to take a look at the click-through rate. Products with a very low click-through rate, for example, greatly below 0.5%, are sometimes really hard to scale. And you can imagine if you have a terrible click-through rate, some of your competitors might have a huge advantage over you. Let's say you get 0.2%, right? And what I'm aiming for, again, rule of thumb, is 1% or more, which sometimes is impossible. But let's say you get 0.2%. Other competitors might get literally 5, 6, 7 times your traffic just due to the click-through rate. And since shopping is super competitive already, with a very low click-through rate, you have a very hard time scaling. Now, another client example here, we have a client in the red light therapy space, high ticket product. We cannot get our click-through rate above 0.3%. I've tried everything from images, titles, price adjustments, promotions, reviews, you name it. We cannot get it above 0.3, sometimes 0.35%. So, of course, I don't have insights into our direct competitors' listings, but I cannot imagine that they are that much better. So it maybe in this case, it's simply a category where the CTR is low. We have another red light therapy client where it's actually higher, but they sell something slightly different. So maybe it's actually the product, and that's why I say impossible in some niches, because we have tested so many things that to me, it's virtually impossible that there is this one little thing that we haven't tried yet that would get the click-through rate from 0.35 to 1. So sometimes you have to accept that, but don't do that quickly. Try a whole bunch of things first, because you need that high click-through rate for maximum performance in order to be able to scale as much as possible without overpaying by crazy margins. CTR is an amazing vehicle in shopping to get good volume. Now, there are some important shopping notes in general that I want to now share with you, right? And this is that, yes, you can run shopping and Pmax at the same time now, just as I've told you. Then also, you don't have to separate products for the sake of it. That's very important, because sometimes people think, oh, I have 3 different categories, so I have to separate them. But if you think about it, why are you doing that in the first place? Are you doing it because you want to have separate negative keyword lists for whatever reason? Or are you just doing it because you feel like they should be separated? Sometimes this doesn't make sense. Sometimes by margin makes more sense, sometimes by performance makes more sense, but just by category for the sake of it, for example, there are other ways that you can separate products just for the sake of it, is not the wisest thing to do. Then next up, we have your feed is your best friend, so you should experiment with it. I hope that's clear now after the second section and what I just said about the click-through rate, but your feed is literally what all your shopping ads are based on. So while, yes, of course, you spend more time ad managing, negative keywords, making strategies, and so on and so forth. I spent more time in the ad manager than in Merchant Center for sure, but nonetheless, the feed is super important, so make sure that you try things. I can definitely tell you that there are cases where we more than doubled revenue by completely testing, experimenting with the feed. That's for sure. Then, shopping first, Pmax second. Pmax is great, Pmax is super scalable. We spent millions and millions and millions on it, as you can see in one of my latest videos where I mentioned spending 12 million plus on Pmax. So it's great, but shopping should always come first because it's all on the shopping network, obviously. And it's easier to manage, it's easier to run in the beginning, you don't need assets, and so on and so forth. Pmax is usually more scalable than shopping, but shopping is still very useful. That is extremely important here, right? Pmax, yes, almost any account should use it. Nonetheless, shopping is crazily powerful. So how I see it is, you should always start with shopping as an e-commerce brand. Very quickly, or at the same time, you need some brand search just to defend yourself, even if it's a $5, $10 per day campaign. Dynamic search, when you have lots of categories and subcategories, is always a no-brainer too. At least give it a try, see how it works, and pause if necessary, but have it in place. Then some category search where you say, okay, I advertise my, leather backpack category and my leather tote bag category and so on and so forth in manual search campaigns, and then try Pmax last. Now, this might come across as Pmax is the least promising campaign type. That's definitely not the case. In many client accounts, it's the best campaign type that we have. Nonetheless, if you start with that too early, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, makes it a bit harder for the other campaigns to get traction. So I do it that way first. And if I see that the campaigns are working very well, I try to scale them and introduce Pmax a bit later. Or I then notice, the other campaigns are not working that great. Let's give Pmax a try. So sooner or later, it will always come in, but try to delay this a little bit to see if you can get something going with those other campaign types. And then, last but not least, segment shopping by countries, except for huge catch-all shopping campaigns. So normally, I want to have one for US, one for UK, one for Canada in terms of shopping. But if you have, let's say, many countries, we have clients that target 30 countries at the same time, it doesn't always make sense to segment. If you're selling to Belgium, for example, and you have very few people there, it doesn't make sense to have its own campaign spending like $6 per day or something. If it's just a tiny subset of your actual target audience. So group them together country-wise when you have many countries. If you have just the usual suspects, put them into individual campaigns where you can scale them individually, and you will see normally better results coming from it. Now, if you learned something in this video and you actually got something out of it that you can apply, hopefully that's the case, and you can literally go to your Google Ads account and start implementing, that's great. If you think you have tried everything already, right, and you need help scaling to like 50,000 a month in ad spend, 100,000, 200,000 or even more, or if you want to scale to 3 million per month in revenue, like we have with our one biggest revenue peak account, more than 3 million a month just from Google, or you need help with like ads, feed, tracking, getting Pmax assets optimized and everything, having a full focus on ROAS and sales, not vanity metrics like impressions, then make sure to check the link in the description. Cartlift, my very small Google Ads for e-commerce boutique agency where we do everything around Google Ads, from feed optimization to making sure you have a great optimized account, tracking, everything that is required to get the most out of Google. The average store owner, brand owner that I talk to is fairly well versed when it comes to Google, but they feel like they hit a ceiling, they cannot scale further. They think they've tried everything, and then I noticed that there are 85 things that can still be tried. So don't hesitate if that sounds like you. If you have an established brand, whether it's only on Meta so far or in general, make sure to check the link in the description. We can discuss your situation. I will give you a full 100% transparent and free account roadmap first, where I tell you what I think is possible with your account. What's the true ceiling, what are the true next steps, and you can either work with us or take it all for yourself and implement it yourself with your team. No hard feelings, no commitment, no nothing. So if that sounds promising to you, make sure to check the link in the description. I really thank you for watching this video so far. If you don't want to miss out on future video, that was too long, 37 minutes. If you don't want to miss out on future videos, make sure to subscribe, leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what your game plan is for 25 with your Google Ads account. And until then, I really look forward to see you in the next video again. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.